All right. We are live.
Welcome to OZ NewsHour. I'm Andy Hagans here with Jimmy Atkinson. Today is January 29th, 2024, and we are covering the most important stories happening this month in the world of opportunity zones.
We're talking about opportunity zones. We're talking about opportunity zones.
Jimmy, I got to tell you, the Lions, they made it all the way to the championship. They lost. It was a little bit heartbreaking.
They made it all the way to halftime of the championship game, and then they stopped playing football.
Yeah, it was a little bit heartbreaking, but I kind of thought that we knew the run was going to end, and I'm just happy that it went as far as it did. You know what I mean? So I have a little bit of heartache today. If I sound a little like, oh, what's wrong with Andy? It's just a little heartbreak, here in Michigan with our Lions. But how about you? How you feeling today, Monday morning, end of January?
I'm sorry about your Lions, Andy. I know you're big a Lions fan as anybody else I know. That's a tough one for you. I'm doing great, though. No complaints. And let's talk some OZs, Andy.
Yeah, let's do it. And Jimmy, you know what? I'm going to have you tee up this first story. I think this is interesting. I know that this is a company that you're trying to get on your podcast. Tell us about the first story we have teed up this week.
Yeah, first story. Brand new one. They just learned about a couple weeks ago. This press release came out on the 17th of January. The Wyoming Reserve OZ Fund. They're launching, and what this is it's kind of an interesting take. It's not a pure real estate play. It's kind of a combination real estate plus operating business. This is a company that's seeking to raise up to $43 million from accredited investors interested in the OZ tax benefits. And what they are a vaulting and transport and buying company of precious metals. So think gold, silver, platinum, I would assume. I think probably gold is their big thing if I had to guess. I don't frankly know too much about this. I'm trying to get in touch with these folks at the Wyoming Reserve and get them on the podcast, potentially because I love this idea here. I'm going to scroll down through this press release here. So this is a little bit about the company itself, a secure vault facility in the country's top sound money state of Wyoming. It's a 70,000 square foot vault located in Casper, but not just anywhere in Casper, Andy. It's located in an opportunity zone in Casper. So this vault is currently under renovation, and they realized, hey, wait a second, we're in an OZ. Let's raise some OZ equity. Let's wrap a QOF around this. So I think it's brilliant.
Jimmy, it's interesting if I could just interject for myself. It's like 2009 Andy and 2024 Andy. Like we have like the Ron Paul sound money, precious metals thing from 2009 that I was obsessed with. And now it's coming full circle 15 years later to opportunity zones. And I'm like, yes, the worlds are colliding, So I'm with you. It's kind of a unique twist. I've never really seen this exact hook.
Yeah, if you guys out there 16 years ago after the big crash, if you didn't know Andy, you missed a great version of Andy. He was a survivalist. He had his bug out ready to go. He had his shack in the cabin. He was talking to me about stocking up on food and gold and silver. And I'm exaggerating, but only a little bit.
Only a little bit.
But I think this is a great one, and it's cool because I don't think. I'll have to double check with them when I get in touch with them. I don't think the investors in this company are owning gold directly. They're owning the what's the term? The pickaxes and the shovels, basically, is what you're owning. You're owning the vaulting company, the vault itself, but not the actual precious metals. But of course, it's highly correlated to the precious metals industry.
But also, Jimmy, I would say historically, better returns from selling the shovels and pickaxes, than owning that store of value. So it makes sense, right? You want to have you want to generate capital gains inside an opportunity zone fund. So it's just a very unique angle. And it's just so awesome that, several years into the program, we're still seeing brand new strategies that we've literally never seen before. Right.
Exactly, Andy. And, I've heard of a couple that are doing something with gold, a couple that are doing something with Bitcoin or crypto, some other speculative stores of value. But this is the first one I've seen like this that is actually constructing or renovating a physical building. So I'm looking forward to having them on the podcast and getting to know them down the road here.
Absolutely. Well, Jimmy, let's move on to our next story. This is our lead story, actually. And I want to talk about this op-ed. So this is an op-ed written by Connie Rathbone. Congress has work to do in legislation that revisits opportunity zones. And Jimmy, I want to get into the op-ed, but first I want to just introduce Connie Rathbone. You know, for any of our audience who's not familiar with Connie, she's a real power player in the OZ space. But Jimmy, you've worked with her for quite some time. So tell us more about Connie Rathbone.
I have. She's great. She's really sharp, by the way, first of all, but besides that, she's a wonderful person. She's been practicing law for a long time. I got to know Connie several years back. We're on the same conference circuit. I see her at every Opportunity Zone conference I go to. She never misses one. I never miss one. I recently saw her at the Novogradac conference in Washington, D.C. back last November. We got to catch up there. And she's going to come on the podcast soon. So a lot of podcast talk during this episode so far, Andy, but these are the types of people that I like to talk with. She is cream of the crop in terms of one of the top Opportunity Zone professionals in the industry. She's located up in, I think she splits time between Portland and Boise. She's up in that area of the country. I believe she's licensed to practice law in both Oregon and Idaho. So she's terrific. I couldn't recommend her more.
Awesome. Well, this op-ed, really two things I want to hit here, Jimmy. And first of all, just my kudos to Connie. And like, this is what we preach in this show. This is what we preach in our mastermind group, OZ Insiders, just that those of us who are invested in OZ funds, both literally as LPs or as GPs, or we're just invested kind of conceptually as industry professionals, we need to be talking about all of the good things that the program does, and, you know, being those active voices out there in the public square. And so it warms the cockles of my heart to see an op-ed like this, just talking about the program, you know, in the mainstream media, right? Like right now we're on the OZ media, which is this really tiny little niche media thing, but we need to talk about OZs and their value in the wider world, right? Just so that voters and Americans and representatives know what the program is and know why it exists and why it ought to keep existing. Do you think that's fair?
Absolutely, it's fair. You know, the House Ways and Means Committee in the House of Representatives and the Senate Finance Committee in the Senate, they came together and agreed on the framework of a new big tax deal I guess a couple weeks back now, Andy, a $78 billion tax deal. You probably read about it in the news a couple weeks back. By the way, that legislation is probably not going to go anywhere. The leadership on both sides of both chambers of Congress have agreed to a framework, but it's tough to put together a bipartisan deal in an election year. Sure. But the fact of the matter is, opportunity zones weren't even a part of that deal, as far as I can tell, which is rather unfortunate. And that's why it's so important for us and everyone else in the industry to continue to beat the drum about how much good opportunity zones are doing. To the extent that you have any success stories or any stories of opportunity zones injecting capital into communities that really need it, and it wouldn't have happened but for the Opportunity Zones program, you got to tell that story to your local communities. You got to tell that story to your local congressmen, to your senators, and try to raise that discussion up to Capitol Hill as much as you can.
Absolutely. And so again, kudos to Connie for writing this op-ed. I thought it was very well authored. But Jimmy, I really want to get to her conclusion or her call to action, maybe. Yeah. I should say. This is the most interesting thing, you know, to quote Connie, quote, "I believe that most people can agree that the substance of the bill is good, but because it is a tax bill, it must be packaged with a larger tax bill that can only gain traction in Washington. While it might be possible for the Senate and House to pass any tax bill prior to the 2024 election, I am not optimistic. More work remains to be done to craft the perfect bill, as the case for these economic zones could not be more apparent." End quote. I agree with you, Connie, that, you know, the case could not be more apparent. I also agree with Connie. I'm not optimistic. Are you optimistic? Do you agree with that? Do you agree with her conclusion?
I do. And I will say, my bad, by the way, because I was optimistic at the end of 2022. And I was also optimistic at the end of 2023 that something might come together in bipartisan fashion, some sort of bipartisan tax bill where the Democrats pushed through some of their priorities and the Republicans pushed through some of their priorities. I'm now pretty pessimistic on anything happening in 2024, just like Connie said. Now, I do think there's a huge window of opportunity in 2025. What the balance of power looks like in 2025, I don't know. We'll find out more in early November here, Andy, who takes control of the House, who takes control of the Senate, and who our next president will be come January of 2025. But until then, it's a lot of speculation. But now I don't think there's any room for any bipartisan tax legislation to get passed, most likely until 25. But I will say in 2025, the Republicans will be highly motivated to renew a lot of the provisions of Trump's big tax bill, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. A lot of those provisions expire in 25 and in 26. Opportunity zones being one of those provisions that expires in 26.
Yeah, and Jimmy, to your point, the balance of power. So just being blunt with you, with our audience, I mean, I'm bearish on anything that requires bipartisanship. So I think it's just more statistically likely or just logically likely that this kind of really any kind of financial or tax related legislation gets passed if either party controls, the House, the Senate, and the White House. Now, if that party is the Democratic Party, I don't think you're going to see OZs get extended, not even reformed and extend. I think it might be toast, maybe permanently or at least for a while. Conversely, if the Republicans, are in control of the House and let's say they were in control of the Senate and the White House, and let's say Trump got reelected, I think that is really the path to this getting reformed and extended. Statistically, I think that's what it looks like, not bipartisan. I just think that the rhetoric, the political atmosphere is just too partisan right now, regardless of the merits of any particular policy. If it's sort of conceptually or historically linked to that, Trump tax cuts and things that happened in his term, don't you agree that there's not really going to be bipartisanship?
I do agree, Andy. I think you're right on, actually.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I disagree. You're wrong. We're going to get some bipartisan agreement going here. Now, opportunity zones themselves are bipartisan in nature. The entire concept was conceived in a white paper by the Economic Innovation Group by one Republican and one Democrat who co-authored that paper back in 2015 when Obama was in the White House. And if this package had passed as part of an Obama administration and it had Obama's administration's handiwork all over it and administrative power all over it back in, I don't know, let's say 2015.
Even if it were identical, but had
even if it were identical,
even had his signature,
you'd be saying the same thing, but the reverse, right?
Yeah.
Only the Democrats would push it through. The Republicans would say, "Oh, that's an Obama thing. That's not going through, right?" We can't.
Well,
we can't
yeah, I don't know. It is a tax cut, though, But putting that aside, I want to do a little what if here, because it looks increasingly likely that Trump is going to win the nomination. Mm-hmm. And by the way, what if Jimmy? I know you kind of handicap this stuff for fun. What are the odds right now for Trump winning re-election, just generally in the head-to-head, not the primary, but head-to-head? Trump.
I got to pull that up in real time here. Let's head over to Predict It and let's see what does it say here. Who will win the 2024 U.S. presidential election? Joe Biden and Donald Trump pretty much neck and neck here.
Neck.
A few other candidates: Gavin Newsom, Nikki Haley, RFK Jr., Kamala Harris is on here too. Less than 10% each. These don't exactly equate to percentages, but they're betting futures essentially. But yeah, they're pretty much neck and neck.
Here's my what if, though. So it's looking increasingly likely that the general election matchup, excuse me, would be.
Share that. Sorry.
No, please. So that's Biden versus Trump, and those are
Biden versus Trump.
That's almost a coin toss there in terms of the predicted odds. Now, separate question: who would be Donald Trump's Veep pick?
Yes, that I did have queued up.
Yeah, and Tim Scott
here's the futures on that one.
Tim Scott is in the mix, right, along with Kristi Noem, Elise Stefanik, Nikki Haley, a couple other people. But if
are you afraid to pronounce Ramaswamy's last name?
I knew you'd rescue me, Jimmy, and you did. So thank you. If Tim Scott gets it, wouldn't that just be a tremendous shot in the arm? Like that's really that's like two what ifs. First of
Yeah,
all, what if
we're playing what ifs here.
that's okay, but what if Tim Scott were the VP pick, and then what if a Trump Scott ticket won the presidency? What would that mean for the Opportunity Zones program? Because I think that would be.
I think nothing would be better for the Opportunity Zones program than for that ticket to win the White House in November. Like that's not the only way Opportunity Zones can get renewed, but if you're asking me, hey, what would give Opportunity Zones the best chance? It would be Trump and Scott in the White House come next January for sure. Because Opportunity Zones are Tim Scott's baby. They're his biggest economic development priority. They have his fingerprints all over it. He talks about OZs all the time. He loves the program. He was the original champion and co-sponsor of the bill, along with his Democratic counterpart, Cory Booker from New Jersey. Those two men did more for getting Opportunity Zones initiated in the first place than anybody else did. So absolutely, that would be a huge boon for the OZ policy if that is what the ticket looks like, and if they end up winning the White House.
Yeah, I know we've had even some links recently in our private chat group at OZ Insiders with Senator Tim Scott, appearing on different, I think it was the Mark Levin show or something, and just different programs lately. So he's just a fantastic, kind of talking about how like Connie Rathbone is just promoting the program. I think in the public square among senators, he's made probably the best, the person who's done the most, I suppose, to promote the program, even in the last year or two. So anyway, it's a big what if, right? You have to take a couple. You have to take a couple leaps there, but it's kind of fun to think about if that came to pass. If Senator Tim Scott were the vice president, what would that mean for the OZ program? Speaking of OZ Insiders, and speaking of Capitol Hill, Jimmy, I want to talk about the upcoming masterclass that we have coming up at OZ Insiders, because that will be focusing on Capitol Hill and OZ legislation. But before we get to the next masterclass, Jimmy, just for any of our listeners who aren't familiar with OZ Insiders and what the group is, what is OZ Insiders?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andy. OZ Insiders is our brand new Opportunity Zones mastermind group. I say it's brand new, but actually we launched it back in November. So it's got a few months of traction now. And essentially it's what it says on the screen here. It's the premier private membership community for Opportunity Zone professionals and investors, particularly if you're a high performing stakeholder in Opportunity Zones, whether you are a practitioner or an investor or you're raising equity. It's a great group for you to get access to the rest of the network, get access to my contacts, and stay in the know and stay relevant on key emerging Opportunity Zones news and trends. So I'm just kind of scrolling through our homepage right here. You can check it out at ozinsiders.com. Watch this welcome video on your own time. Andy and I host all of the meetings together, and I'll take you to the calendar page here to show you our upcoming masterclasses. Andy, you were asking about the one coming up in February. We host these every month, the second week of every month, typically either on Monday or Tuesday. Our upcoming one is going to be on Monday, February 12th, 3 p.m. Eastern time, presented by Shay Hawkins of the Opportunity Funds Association, and formerly the tax policy advisor to Senator Tim Scott, the aforementioned Senator Tim Scott. Shay was actually his right-hand man in terms of getting that Opportunity Zones legislation drafted and pushed through into that Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was signed into law at the end of 2017. So I'm thrilled, and we are really privileged to be able to host Shay Hawkins. He's going to come in and give us an update on what's happening inside the Opportunity Zone legislation, and give us a little peek behind the scenes of what's happening on Capitol Hill, because he knows better than anybody else I know what's happening behind the scenes there, and he can give us the skinny on what is in this pending legislation, when it might go through, and then what the next steps would be if it does go through. What a renewed Opportunity Zone program might end up looking like. So we're really excited to have him joining us. That's Monday, February 12th at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and you can learn more about joining that masterclass and joining OZ Insiders by visiting ozinsiders.com.
Yeah, so that's 2 weeks from today, I believe, or 2 weeks from tomorrow. One of the two. It's in about 2 weeks.
From today. 2 weeks
Yep.
from today, Monday. Yep.
Jimmy, I also wanted to recap. We had, for our previous masterclass, it's now available on demand on the website. We had Andrew Daup come in and teach a class. It was really more of a workshop on PPMs and subscription docs for sort of prototypical opportunity zone fund. And I thought that masterclass was just fantastic, both for GPs or professionals who work in the space, but also just for investors to kind of see how a fund really works, to kind of, get in the behind the scenes with like how a GP would look at how to, structure a fund and kind of see how the sausage is made.
Absolutely. No, that one was a lot of fun. And Andy, you're being modest, but you did a great job co-hosting that class. For those of you who missed it, Andy was essentially a case study or an example of a GP who was raising, I forget how much you were trying to raise in this hypothetical example. Maybe it was $25 million in Los Angeles. He had an endorsement deal signed with Shohei Ohtani on top just to make it kind of fun. And it's essentially everybody else in the room was a fly on the wall for this one-on-one meeting between Andy and Andy's attorney, Andrew, as Andrew structured this hypothetical GP investment in a QOF and how he could end up raising equity from LP investors. It was brilliant. I loved it. And I learned a lot, and it was a great format.
Yeah. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate the compliment, but I just loved, speaking with Andrew about how to do fee structures and waterfall, like all that kind of stuff. I think it's just really helpful for investors to just kind of soak in. Like, even if you're just an LP in OZs, I think it's good to just really soak that in and understand, how sponsors make money and how their incentives do or do not align with your incentives as an investor. So I just think a lot of that content really is universally applicable, even just to pure investors. So make sure to check out ozinsiders.com if you want to attend this next masterclass with Shay. I have a feeling, Jimmy, that this is going to be very, very highly attended, because this is a question that you just get asked about constantly. Just what's going on with the OZ legislation, and so Shay can really give us that inside look, the inside story. But I want to move on to our next story. Speaking of stories, this was published by the Morning Journal. It's about the Ohio Opportunity Zone tax credit program. Jimmy, I saw this in the news, and I think I found this on Jill Homan's newsletter. So I always want to give a tip of the hat to her, because that newsletter does a great job of keeping me and many people informed. But I actually am not totally clear on what this even refers to. I know that it's open for a couple more days in the state of Ohio. Could you walk us through what this story is, what it means, in the broader context of opportunity zones?
Yeah. So first I'll tell you tactically what needs to happen here, and then I'll zoom out and tell you, well, what the heck even is this Ohio Opportunity Zone tax credit program, and to whom does it even apply? So this story is about the Ohio, a change that was made to this Ohio specific tax credit. It essentially opens up another enrollment window for anybody who has equity or has invested into a qualified opportunity fund that then redeploys the capital into Opportunity Zone property located in the state of Ohio. You have until February 1st to apply for the tax credit. Applications can be submitted now until 5 p.m. Thursday, February 1st. Before, it was only available once per fiscal year. Now they've opened up 2 different windows. Talk to your CPA or the fund that you're investing in to learn more about that. But okay, now to zoom out, what is the Ohio Opportunity Zone tax credit? So, Andy, unlike some other states, New York, California, to name the 2 big ones that do not conform with the Opportunity Zone's tax incentive. By the way, most states either do conform or don't have a capital gains tax rate to begin with.
Right.
California, New York, a handful of others. I want to say North Carolina, Mississippi. I know there's 2 more. Massachusetts. I can't remember them all. There's like 4, 5, 6 of them that don't conform.
Got it.
Ohio does the reverse. Not only do they conform, but they also offer an additional carrot, an additional incentive on top. Not only are we going to fully conform as a state with the federal Opportunity Zones tax incentive, but we're going to give you a 10% tax credit if you invest in a qualified opportunity fund.
So Jimmy, they
deploys capital to Ohio.
They conform 110%. You know,
they conform 110% essentially.
They're super fans. They're super fans.
Here's how it works. There are some restrictions. I think the fund has to only invest in Ohio. It can't be a national fund that invests some in Ohio and some in Minnesota and some here and some there. So, or it only applies to the amount that actually gets deployed into Ohio, essentially. Check with your CPA on that. He'll know more. But if you invest $1 million into an Ohio qualified opportunity fund, and let's say all of that money is invested or deployed into Opportunity Zone property that's located in Ohio, well, then the next enrollment period, you can tell the state of Ohio, hey, I just invested $1 million into your Ohio Opportunity Zone property. They'll give you a $100,000 tax credit. And you can do one of two things with that. You can apply that $100,000 tax credit to your Ohio state tax liability. Now, maybe you don't have that much of a liability in Ohio. Maybe you're not located there. Maybe you don't reside there. Maybe you don't have any Ohio income. There's also a secondary market where you can sell the tax credits. And my contacts tell me that they can typically sell those tax credits for 85 to 90 cents on the dollar. So for $1 million investment in Ohio, you're getting back at least $85,000 in cash, just for investing in the Buckeye state. So I love this.
Jimmy, kudos to Ohio, right? We're talking about states that don't conform. I mean, they over conform. So I appreciate, every once in a while you got to sit back and just appreciate Ohio for what it is. I grew up in Ohio, was raised in Ohio. Our other business partner, Michael, also grew up, raised in Ohio. And Jimmy, as long as we're recognizing Ohio in terms of how they over conform to the OZ program, I think it's time to get you on the record and admit that the Ohio State Buckeyes college football program is the nation's best and foremost college football program. Can I finally get you on the record to admit that?
I don't think you could. I mean, maybe if they had beaten Michigan this year, but I don't think I can agree with that. They're up there. They're top 10. We'll give them top 10.
All right. We have Jimmy Atkinson on the record admitting the Ohio State Buckeyes are top 10 football program. Our next story also comes to us courtesy of Jill Homan's Opportunity Zone Outlook newsletter. And Jimmy, this one was really interesting to me. This was Jay Parsons going, I'm going to say viral, semi-viral, viral-ish on Twitter.
Hey, 27 retweet tweets is viral for an Opportunity Zone specific.
I was just going to say, this has got to be like top 10 most viral tweet ever regarding Opportunity Zones in the history of the platform. So unpack this tweet for us, Jimmy. What does the tweet say and why did it go viral?
So the tweet is essentially proving that Opportunity Zones, the Opportunity Zone policy is spurring development in Opportunity Zone locations. So Jay Parsons here is looking at apartments that are being developed in Opportunity Zones. What does he say here? He says Opportunity Zones are working as planned. The number of apartment units built in an OZ jumped 3x between 2016 and 2022, and then doubled in 2023. So he's got this graphic down here, which I'll enlarge here on this tab. So he points to a point in time where the OZ legislation was signed in 2017. I would actually maybe move this arrow here because OZs weren't, I mean, technically they were signed at the very end of 2017, but they didn't really go into effect and regulations weren't passed until 2019. So I don't know. OZs like somewhere in this time frame is when they were starting to ramp up for sure. 2018, 2019. The gray bars are the volume of units delivered in Opportunity Zones on this left axis here. So we went from, what is this? I don't know, 30,000 something units in Opportunity Zones in 2018 to last year, or I guess this is forecast 24. So take it with a grain of salt.
135,000.
135,000. Yeah.
Wow.
Now the what is this? This is the blue line is percentage of units delivered nationally. So this contextualizes it within all units nationally. So maybe this one's the more appropriate one to look at, because you could say, okay, well maybe everything's just grown that much over time, but Opportunity Zones share of new apartment construction has improved over time as well. From, let's see, this is about 10% in 2018 up to forecasted nearly 20%.
About 8%. Yeah, that's actually in the text of the tweet. He says in 2023, 20% of all new apartments in the US were located in an OZ, up from approximately 8% prior to the legislation. So that's a 150% increase in terms of share of multifamily units, which is incredible. I mean, this may be the most kind of eye-popping stat that I've seen. You know, I think if see, here's the issue, Jimmy, back to the whole political aspect of all this. You have to agree that more multifamily units are a good thing. That's a good policy outcome, more multifamily units, right? But if you do think that that's a good policy outcome for society, for the economy, for human beings who need housing, then that is a vindication of the program and very clear stats, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a good outcome, and you think it's a good outcome. I think other people would call into question whether that outcome is good or bad, right?
Right.
I think that's where the argument lies.
People who have a screw loose might call into question, right?
Well, you said it, not me.
Yeah. Well, hat tip to Jay Parsons.
Absolutely.
For creating a viral tweet about opportunity zones. Jimmy, we need to get our intern on that at Opportunity DB. We need to have our intern start spooling together some viral tweets to promote OZ NewsHour. You know, like, could we go viral?
We might help if we had some original research too from time to time. We gotta publish some original research, some original proprietary data.
You know what? On that note, stay tuned. We will have an announcement coming up later on, not this episode, but later in the year, about some proprietary materials that we are releasing. Very excited about that, but we'll put a pin in that. I want to move on to our next story.
Well, I was gonna say, maybe we can get Jay Parsons to retweet it.
Oh yeah, there we go. I like it. I like it. Okay. Verte, Jimmy, this was a big announcement, and I know you are familiar with them. So why don't you let us know what's this big new announcement from the Verte family of funds?
I'm very familiar with them. I love Len Mills. Len Mills and I go back quite a few years. I want to say I met him in 2019, which is a long time ago in the context of opportunity zones. He's been on OZ Pitch Day. He's been on my podcast, and his fund is really unique. He invests in early stage venture capital startups, usually with some sort of patent protected or medical tech angle to it. So he made this LinkedIn post a few weeks ago. Verte is pleased to announce the addition of Cool Tech Medical to its growing portfolio of companies. So congrats to Cool Tech for getting some investment from Verte, and congrats to Verte for getting some equity in CoolStat. And what they do is it looks like it's a medical device that helps manage patient temperature. So I'm not a medical expert, but it looks like a pretty cool product, and it's right in Len's wheelhouse to invest in something like this. And his portfolio of companies that he has equity in under the Verte Family of Funds brand is a pretty impressive list of some promising startup companies, Andy. So, and then the brilliant thing about this is it's like a pure diversified VC fund. So, you know, if just one of these many portfolio companies is a unicorn or hits it big, I mean, his investors are going to be sitting pretty 10 years from now.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, you know, that there's multiple venture capital funds structured as opportunity zone funds. Sometimes when I mention that to investors or just other people who are asking me about the different types of opportunity zone funds, they're surprised to hear that there are any VC funds structured as opportunity zone funds. It's like, actually, there are several. For sure. So congrats to them. We have a couple more stories, Jimmy. The next story, we're back to the state of Ohio, right? Tee this one up. What's going on in the city of Lima?
Yeah. What is it, Lima or Lima? We didn't talk about it.
As an Ohio, as a Buckeye, I can say I've heard both.
Okay, so I guess it's Lima, Peru, but I guess it's Lima, Ohio. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I think either is acceptable.
So like a lima bean. I don't know. Oh, interesting. I was thinking Lima in my head, but yeah, I'll say Lima. So this one comes from the Lima News, redistributed through Yahoo Finance, which is where we found it. Lima has formed a big partnership with Arctaris Impact Fund, which is one of the oldest impact-oriented opportunity zone funds in existence. They've been around since the very beginning. Jonathan Tower, he was on OZ Pitch Day, by the way, Andy, a couple years back. Really interesting guy, really interesting fund that they have. And their fund actually came up in our OZ Insiders private group chat a few days ago, Andy, because one of our investors was looking for an infrastructure fund, and Jonathan Tower and Arctaris came to mind because their fund focuses a lot on building infrastructure. This particular fund, or this particular collaboration between Lima and Arctaris, I'll just read you a couple quotes here to kind of explain.
By the way, Jimmy, we also say tomato.
Yeah,
tomato,
all right.
a vegetable in Ohio, we call it a tomato. So there, you might, if you're gonna be a Buckeye, we're gonna have to there's a bunch of words that you got to pronounce differently. Anyway, back to Lima.
Sounds good. Well, yeah. Lima's mayor, Sharetta Smith, here's the quote from Sharetta. The city of Lima, in collaboration with the Lima Allen County Chamber of Commerce and the Lima area Chamber Foundation, are partnering with Arctaris Impact Investors to create the Arctaris Lima Opportunity Zone Fund. It is a $25 million commitment to invest capital in growing companies and community infrastructure. By the way, Lima is not a big city. And it's just these 3 census tracts located just in their downtown corridor. So $25 million is going to go a long way down there, I would expect. Jonathan Tower, CEO, says, we like being a partner with communities that are on a path toward long-term revitalization. We were attracted to Lima quite a few years ago. This is officially the launch of a $25 million investment program that aims to bring more jobs, more people, and more housing to the residents. So Jonathan does not have a screw loose, Andy. He wants to build more housing in Lima, which I think is outstanding. So congrats to Lima and Arctaris on the big $25 million partnership. That's really cool.
Yeah. And, Ohio, I mean, almost every state in the union, there's some booming places in Ohio, and there's also some places that are in need of revitalization, are in need of investment. And so absolutely the Opportunity Zone program and having investment going to Ohio through that is very welcome indeed. And, this has really become sort of the Ohio episode, Jimmy, the Buckeye episode. And maybe that's the consolation prize, with Michigan winning the national championship. I'm over here on the other side of the border. I'm a Michigander now, right? But I grew up in Ohio. So I get it from both sides of that rivalry. But that's okay. I can appreciate each side and the value of both states. Jimmy, we're almost out of time. Before we go, I want to ask you, what is your pick of the month? What are you reading, watching, or listening to right now in the world of opportunity zones that you would recommend to our audience?
Nothing has me more excited, Andy, than our upcoming event, OZ Pitch Day Spring 2024. This is the first time I'm talking about it publicly on a podcast program, because we literally just put the registration page live for this event, which is occurring March 7th, 2024.
Jimmy, sorry to interrupt. Can I just tell you, I'm bringing it up on my browser right now. I'm literally registering right now so I don't forget. So anybody listening, just go to ozpitchday.com and just register right now while he's talking about it.
Yeah, register right now. ozpitchday.com. Go check it out. It is a live, free online event taking place on March 7th, 2024. It's a Thursday. We're going to begin at 10 a.m. Eastern time, like we always do. This will be I think this is our 11th OZ Pitch Day ever. So we've got a few of these in the bag. We do 3 of them a year. And what it is here, I'll show you the registration form here. By the way, Andy, we streamlined the registration form this time around. I just need your name, your email.
Already done. It took me 10 seconds. Am I the first one registered? I
think you're the 30th-ish one registered. We just put it live over the weekend. Okay. I did send out an email announcement about it. So we got a few people to sign up. We usually get somewhere between 750 to 1,000 people to register for these big online events. So they do attract a lot of eyeballs. It's It's a 1-day free online event, and it's a mix of education and Opportunity Zone fund investment pitches. So if you just want to learn more about Opportunity Zones, I start the day with my Opportunity Zones Explained crash course for high net worth investors. I tell you everything you need to know about Opportunity Zones in 20 minutes. It's just like that. And you get kind of caught up to speed, whether you are a total beginner who doesn't know anything about Opportunity Zones, or maybe you've been doing them for a few years and you need a refresher course. I think it's a pretty good program, 20-minute program there to get yourself started. I've been working on this presentation and refining it over the last 5 years. So I think I've got it pretty dialed in by now. And then we move into the fund pitches. It's a showcase of qualified opportunity funds that are currently raising equity. We've got a few sponsors signed up already. Urban Catalyst will be there. Montaday Globe will be there. Your Space America Self Storage will be there. Our afternoon slate is still TBD. We're also going to have an educational panel. That topic, also TBD. All I know is Jerry Ryson's going to be on it with me. Hey out there, Jerry. Thanks for supporting the show. Thanks for joining us on OZ Pitch Day. We do have a lot of sponsorship packages available still. So if you are a qualified opportunity fund or an OZ deal and you're seeking equity from outside investors, contact us to learn more. You can learn more by emailing us info@opportunitydb.com or head to ozpitchday.com, scroll down to the very bottom and click the Partner with OZ Pitch Day button, and we'll be in touch. So that's a little bit about OZ Pitch Day. I'll tell you guys more about it. We'll have, by the time we do our February OZ NewsHour, the agenda should be more fully rounded out. I spend these next few weeks before that next episode getting the agenda locked in place, more or less. So I'll probably plug this one again in February.
Awesome. Well, and honestly, these are always a ton of fun. You do a fantastic job emceeing these OZ Pitch Days, Jimmy. And which actually, that brings me to my pick of the month, which is another live stream that you did, navigating the opportunity zones industry, that you did on January 10th.
Ooh, this was a good one.
If I was a less confident or more jealous type of person, then then this may have upset me, because you went live about OZs with other people. But I have to admit, the rapport that you have with Ashley and Chris is awesome. And this was very well attended. You had a lot of engagement, and your live stream, it was fantastic. But seriously, Jimmy, you are just when you go live, when you talk about OZs, when those two elements combine, you are just at your best. And I really enjoyed this. What would you call it? I would call it a live stream, because each of you, Chris Cooley, Ashley Tyson, and you, Jimmy, you talked about the different groups and communities that there are in the opportunity zone space. And I think that's really, really important, because sometimes when you're researching OZs or selecting investments, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm in this weird thing. And I told my buddy at the bar or the golf course about it, and he looked at me like I grew a second head. Like, what the heck are you in an opportunity zone? So it's nice to kind of know, oh, there's actual communities online, or that meet in person, that meet online, that talk about this stuff and navigate this world together. And the three of you, I think, did a really good job of just kind of introducing all of those different communities that are out there. And Jimmy, it looked like you had a lot of fun too during the live stream.
I had a blast, Andy. Thanks for the kind words. It was a fun one to record for sure.
Yeah, you three have great rapport. And with that, I think that's it for today's show. Our show notes are always available at opportunitydb.com. We'll be back in a month with our next edition of the show. Thank you for watching and listening. And Jimmy, thank you for joining me today. This was a lot of fun.
Andy, this is awesome, man. I can't wait to do it next month. And in the meantime, I hope we get a lot of our listeners and viewers to register for OZ Pitch Day. Head on over to ozpitchday.com to learn more. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.